Right, so I believe that we are live. So hello everyone and welcome to today's healing conversation with me, Einav Avni, and Kristine, that I'm going to ask her or you to introduce yourself. So welcome, and Kristine, over to you.
Thank you so much. My name is Kristine Czilling
Kristine.
Tora, and I'm a special educator from Norway, and I'm running a company called Angstportal, or the Anxiety Portal in English, where I work with people with anxiety in all walks of life, from children to, I think the oldest person is almost 80. So every people with anxiety, and we are talking about how to feel safe, emotions, how to feel connected, and all those topics, and how you can relieve yourself from your anxiety without pushing yourself, but instead working with your emotions. So that's my topics.
And a very one that is really needed these days, right? I mean, um, I think anxiety has been around for a long time, obviously, but I guess most recently with all this COVID and stuff, people are more feeling things that they maybe haven't felt before.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the situation in Ukraine, people also are feeling a lot of feelings, which is it's hard, and maybe also childhood trauma will be triggered by the general feeling of being unsafe. So it's, I think, a topic that everybody is having some sort of a connection to.
Absolutely. And I definitely feel that ever since the news about the Ukraine, I feel really unsettled. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, it's really, really impacting me, of course, and everyone really that I'm speaking with.
Yeah.
And so, but just to stare us a little bit, today we want to spend more time speaking. I guess anxiety might be a result of that, but we want to talk more about the inner child and what it's all
Yeah.
about, and how do we know we have one, or if we forgot that we had one. So over to you. What is it, the inner child? What do we know about it?
And the inner child is a process where we get to know our inner trauma. So, in my opinion, we all have experienced some sort of trauma. The everyday situations where we didn't feel felt heard, felt safe, physical or psychological safety, and that child at one point felt not good enough in some way, and that's the inner child. It's the part of us that is still that sensitive um, child who needs comfort, who needs to feel safe. And as adults, when we go around in the world, we are constantly bombarded uh, with the feelings, with things that is happening, and especially now with so big worldly events every day almost.
Mm.
That inner part of us feels unsafe, um, and I also feel like in our society at large, what's for the most part not being recognized is the emotional side of us. And as children, we are, most of us, it's been a little bit better the last couple of years, but for the most part of the people who are grown today, we had a childhood where emotions wasn't that big of a deal. You were supposed to be seen and not heard, and not to have opinions, not talk back, all those topics that makes us have an like our emotions is our enemy, so our inner child is not safe. And when we meet our anxiety, it's often helpful for people to think about that it's your inner child that needs safety. And some people, if you have children yourself, to look at your inner child as your own child, it's often easier to recognize that it's that sensitive part of you needing some guidance, needing you to just be there, to just show up to yourself. So you can say it's a method for meeting your own emotions.
That is fascinating. And so what I'm hearing is that we all have an inner child, and we all we might not necessarily be in contact with it, but when we recognize that we have some emotions or some anxiety or stress, or maybe emotion that we can't really explain, or I don't want to say control, but I guess understand is probably a better word. That a good thing to do is to start thinking about this connection with the inner child, and in what ways has it not been allowed some, the freedom of speech in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's like when you are in a situation where you feel like you're going to your job and you don't necessarily like your job, you can really strongly feel those parts, like the adult part, which tells you have to do things you don't like to do, you have to do this, and you also will feel that sensitive part of you, like not wanting to do it. And we are all grown up to only listen to the part that tells you to do stuff, that you should do this and that. But inner child work is about also taking care of that other part, which is also very valid, and asking yourself, why doesn't I want to? What is this inner voice telling me to do something else, or something in that situation doesn't feel safe to me? And start working, meeting that, and that will, in most part, also making it easier for us to do things we have to do because we have all our parts with us doing it.
This is really interesting for me, because I think a lot of people that I meet, they don't go to a job that they actually enjoy. It's just a job that pays the bills, and a lot of the time they chose the job just because of the financial, rewards and stuff. But what you're saying is to say, actually, let's pause for a second and recognize, what is it? What are the reasons that says, actually, I don't want to go to this job? And excuse me, but how do people going? How are they going to make the connection between I don't want to go to work, which is a very frequent Monday morning kind of feeling, versus I'm recognizing that there is something that is not, that doesn't feel safe for me. How are we making this connection?
Like you said, pause for a second and to feel and ask yourself, why doesn't I want to? Is it because I'm tired or I haven't had enough to sleep, or is something like that? Or is it a deeper emotional situation where I don't feel safe? There's a relationship at work, or some people that are not treating you right. How do you feel doing the things you usually do? If you're talking to people, how does that those people make me feel? And recognize that feeling part of it. um, so could it be, and me talking about people with anxiety, oftentimes it's not you have to quit your job. That's a bit much for most people. But how can I make the work environment work for me? How can I ask my manager or other people, how can I, how do you say it in English, like manage parts of my work? Like some people might ask, could I have an office? Other people might feel like I need to work in an open environment because I need noises, I need other people, and like feel, how will I feel safe? And that will differ for everybody. We have different needs. And of course, for some people, it's more serious, like I have to quit my job or I have to be somewhere else. But I think for most of people, it's like recognizing that we have some sort of power in the situation we're in. And by listening to our inner voice, it's so much easier to find what I need is, and maybe that's what inner child work is about, like your needs and how to meet them.
To me, this is fascinating, and I'm thinking back to some instances with my own client, when they say something like, a lot of the time there's some triggers or discomfort with the manager or peers, or there's usually someone in the office that makes you feel really uncomfortable, like you maybe maybe even feeling like they don't like you, and bringing it very personal. What would you say about that? Because I mean, I'm guessing that there is, what you're saying is that there is a connection with our childhood, where maybe this person at work reminds us of someone in our childhood. So
Yeah.
it's so interesting to surface this idea that actually maybe it's not that you're making it up, that this person, there's some triggers, but actually that the source of all of that starts from, a lot earlier on. So what can be something that we say to someone like this? You're going to walk, there is someone that triggers you, and you recognize that maybe it's coming from feeling unsafe. What how are we going to help this person to move forward?
Yeah, and I think it's about asking yourself why. Why am I reacting the way I am reacting? What in that other person is triggering something in me? Because nobody can make you feel anything. The emotions are from in you. So what is triggering you? And of course, some people are not nice people and might want to seek you out for some reason. But still, then it's about you and how I connect to my own reactions.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does this make me think of? So, if a person look at you a certain way, or says a word, a sentence, or has a tone of voice that triggers something, and by triggering I mean you feel uncomfortable, you feel scared, you feel anxious, what does that remind you of? Have you had that emotion before? Is there any for some people it's a certain type of personality that can trigger you, so try and think about what other people perhaps in your childhood also had um, that tone or that yeah, that personality that made you feel like you had to protect yourself. And sometimes we have to escape or to do certain things to make us feel safe, and that could be to create distance. But
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, most people are not out to get you. And it's more about how can I make myself feel safe, like taking more breaks, or in my breaks, I have to be alone, or I have to listen to my music, or go and sit in my car, or do something that makes me feel safe. But I think the most important thing is ask yourself, why did I react like this? And not try to tell ourselves that I don't have any reason to react, or I have to stop reacting and I have to toughen up, because the reactions are coming because there is a reason for it. And we have to also honor that. And that's our inner child trying to tell you something, just like your own child um, will tug at you and let you know that this doesn't feel safe to me.
The interesting thing is really that we're saying we're feeling something, so let's not just dismiss it, or not just say actually everyone feels the same way, and actually
Yeah.
sit with it and be with it and allow these feelings to say something. Because when you allow yourself to go backwards into your previous patterns in lives, you are able to recognize that actually yes, something like that has happened before, and actually maybe this is a chance to maybe fix it or correct it, or I don't know, maybe give it a different um voice than the one that we had when we were children and we didn't know better.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
think to think about ourselves as those children, it makes all the difference. Myself, I have a daughter who is 3.5, and she started kindergarten like 2 years ago. And I observed how she was reacting to that unsafe environment. Because as an adult, you know that kindergarten is safe, but
Mm.
as a child, you don't know that. And those two perspectives are important. And as adults, or even as older children, like you start school, university, new jobs, it's a lot of unsafe environment. Not because they are objectively unsafe, but you don't know anybody, and so you feel unsafe.
Yeah.
And to really know that that perspective is just as important as the intellectual part of you.
Yeah. And when we say the inner child, what ages are we referring to? I mean, at what point are you no longer considered, that part of the inner child?
For most people, you will see emotional trauma before the age of 7.
Mm.
And for the younger children, our brains are not developed to regulate our emotions. So trauma at that age will feel like more chaotic, or will feel um, more unsafe, and it's harder to know the situation. So that happened, and where you were and what you were wearing. It will just be an emotion.
Mm.
But usually up to 7, we will think about. But of course, that inner child can experience trauma all our life. And so for some people, it will be when you are grown up, you will feel the most. But up to 7 years is when we will experience the most developing.
And so, what my understanding is that, yes, as you say, up to the age of 7, and then basically, because we don't know to put the name to the emotion, we know that it's there, but we're now starting to cover on it with some coping mechanisms and finding ways to just deal with life. And then, of course, when you're an adult and you start feeling the pain, and like, why am I like this? What has brought me here? That's when some of us start to question back. So are you saying that people, for example, more specifically, that suffering with anxiety and stress, are they more likely? Should they really go in and do the inner child work? Is that like your recommendation?
Yeah, I really believe so, because anxiety is a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sign that your nervous system is at some parts had enough. It's been too much for your whole system. Because as a child, when we are not learned how to deal with our emotions, because no children are born with the ability to regulate our emotions,
Mm-hmm.
but we are born with all of our emotions. So that's why you see a 3-year-old melting down, because every emotion is so big, and you are not equipped to deal with it. So you will throw yourself to the ground and throw things around. And some of us adults also do that when we get angry or we get big emotions, because we never learned how to cope with emotions.
Mm.
And so that's why inner child work is so important when dealing with stress or anxiety, to really honor and respect your body, because your body is doing such amazing work for you, making you cope and giving you all sorts of trauma responses, which may not always be the best for you, but at least it kept you alive and made
Mm.
you become the person you are today. And as adults, we have to look at that child and ask yourself, what did I had to do to survive? Which sounds dramatic, but it's the truth. If you didn't have those responses, you
Yeah.
couldn't cope in the environment you grew up in. And for some people, it's in your home with your parents. Other people, it might be kindergarten or school, which might be harsh for most people.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of if you experience trauma, but when did it happen?
Right. And I feel that it's quite a relief, in a sense, to know that actually we all go through these
Yeah,
things, and
yeah.
it's just a question of, you know, yes, just looking back and trying to figure out actually at what point has this trauma started. and
Yeah.
in what way it's impacting you today. So what would you say, so people listening and thinking back to their own lives, what are some of the things that they should be doing? I mean, we said the title of the talk is How to Heal Your Inner Child in 3 steps. What are these 3 steps? What should people do?
Yeah, I think first of all, starting the thinking process within yourself, because
Mm.
thinking is all, it's before the feeling part. For most people, meeting those emotions behind it's really hard. So
Yeah.
starting to think about the process, thinking about how could it be that I feel the way I feel today, or some situations are harder for me than others. Um, Maybe you are a very sensitive person and have a lot of emotions. And why is that draining for me? Why do I have the emotion, or the why do I have the connection to my emotions that I have? So start thinking about it. For some people, writing down is a good way of getting that overview, or talking to somebody. It doesn't have to be a professional, but a friend. But a professional is also a, a really good place to start, especially
Mm.
someone who is um, trauma trained, or has an um, trauma, where trauma is a big part of the way they um, what's the word, coaching, or treating
Yeah.
people. Um, so that's the first step. Um,
Mm.
because the when you, if you have never worked like this before, it might feel uh, not good to go into the inner child, or it might feel silly to do so, because you
And
have always learned that.
all right. Sorry, I interrupted. I was so excited with my question. I was just wondering what is the difference for people who has been to therapy and counseling and all of that? What is the difference between in a child walk versus, say, normal therapy, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, I think it's the thought of meeting the emotions behind every action,
Mm.
not to just I'm not sure what the English word, but in Norwegian it's like exposing your anxiety, or doing stuff that you're anxious for. So if you have panic attacks driving a car, you should drive more car. So it's like, what can I do now, um, and further on in my life, to conquer my anxiety. But when we talk about in a childhood, it's more like um, backwards. Like, when I was a child, where does this come from? Thinking about our roots, or family, it's more in the trauma part, and
Hmm.
emotions, not just how can I think differently, but why do I feel the way I feel, and how can I meet those feelings. Because I feel a popular belief is that if you experience sorrow, which most of us will go through, you're not supposed to feel the sorrow, because you can't drown in it. You have to be positive, you have to get back at work, you have to do all these things. And nobody learns you to feel your emotions, and how you can make it easier for you in the long run, if you learn how to just pause for a second and just experience what it is to be you with all of your emotions. I think that's the main difference.
And so someone that has done the work with the inner child and recognizing the emotions, the reason why the emotions come in the way that they are, what will they do or feel or handle the emotions differently moving forward once they understand once they understand and once they're able to actually walk with their emotions more?
For some people, it would be to know that this is not a work you have to do once. Because every second, almost, we have a new emotion come up, or we
Mm.
watch the news and something else will come up, or a different perspective to something you might have been worked on many, many times before. So it's hard when you recognize that this is not something you do and then you are finished, but this is a lifelong thing. And when you are in your anxiety, or you feel hopeless, or you feel all those hard emotions, it's hard to think about that this will be my life forever. And that's not the case, of course, because after a while it will become a part of you. It's like more you're curious about how do I feel, or why do I react the way I do, more than your emotions being so hard or dark that I can't cope.
Mm.
So recognize that this is how it is, or always supposed to be, being a human. You have emotions, but you have never learned how to really deal with those.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that sometimes we do feel the emotions, but the trauma stays, and I think it's important to also stress maybe that actually trauma is not necessarily abuse or physical abuse or mental or emotional. It doesn't have to be the extreme that we mostly go to in our minds. It can be just this emotional turmoil that we just didn't know how to handle and how to process.
Yeah, it's exactly that, being in the situation as a child, not knowing how to cope and being left alone with those emotions, which starting kindergarten is something most children do, and just that feeling is traumatizing,
Yeah.
especially when you don't have anybody to talk to about recognizing that this was hard.
Yeah. And so I met a few people, quite a few people that at some point decided not to do emotions. Like I'm guessing they decided that as children, as a way of protecting them. And now, of course, in adult life, it's still, well, they're still blocked in that way. What can we say to these people?
Learning to feel your emotions again is possible, and it's also to know that it's really logical to not being able to feel the emotions anymore, because your emotions made you feel unsafe. And
Mm.
for some people, it might be that your parents were loud and screaming, really angry, and themselves couldn't cope with their emotions,
Yeah.
which left you learning that emotions are dangerous and uh, really unsafe. Or maybe you had parents that didn't talk about anything, and even though bad things happened in the family, nobody talked about it. Um, so you also in those situations learn that emotions are not unsafe, and I have to bury them down. So when we are adults, and some people, as you said, will be totally numb to their feelings.
Mm.
So starting recognizing that your physical symptoms might be emotions. So if you feel a stomach ache,
Yeah.
feeling that stomach ache and asking yourself, have I felt this before? And I also think for some people that are not, some people are like emotionally based. Like myself, I'm really sensitive and I have a lot of emotions, but other people, or some people, are not that emotional, just as their personality.
Mm.
So being aware that your physical symptoms also is emotions can help you. If this doesn't make sense to you, it's normal if it doesn't, because you have in a different system. So the physical body also tells you what you feel, and start to
Mm.
connect, and it will be easier and easier.
Yeah, and I definitely believe in that our unconscious mind is sending us messages that even if
Yeah.
we consciously decide to ignore, the unconscious mind is going to still say, hang on, we're not done yet. There's still some
Yeah.
things for you to, to acknowledge and think about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I have another question, I guess, before we move to the other two steps in the walk. A lot of the time I hear this idea that we need to go back and um, ask forgiveness from our inner child, or really have these conversations with the inner child, so that that inner child feels supported and loved, and And a lot of the time it's about going back there and kind of asking for forgiveness, because maybe we treated it in an unkind way, and now we know better, so we can maybe do better. What is that all about?
Um, I think it's about maybe gaining the trust back from your inner child, because when you have experienced time and time again that little child wanting someone to just hold them or be there or take you out of difficult emotion, you feel betrayed. But at start it might be your parents or
Mm.
teachers or friends, but growing up, right now it might be you in every second of every day when you do something that your body, or the opposite of what your body tells you to do. So starting to recognize your what you need, your needs, and also doing something about them. It's
Mm.
an important breaking point, and by that maybe forgiving yourself. Because another perspective is also that to forgive ourselves that we did as uh, we did the best we could. As a child you were not meant to do all those things, or knowing how to cope, or using tactics that was better for you. Like some people, if you drink, smoke, use food, use exercise, all of those coping mechanisms, or relationships,
Mm.
you didn't know better because you hadn't learned any better. So forgive yourself because you didn't do anything on purpose.
Mm.
And I talk to a lot of people who have tremendous shame around things they have done or relationships they stayed in, but recognizing then that you did as best you could and you couldn't know what you didn't know. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So, but we can start now to recognize what do I need and do something about it right now.
Mm.
That will help.
Yeah, it's never too late. It's not yeah, never too late. So let's go back to the steps. So we spoke about, first of all, recognizing the emotions and feeling them, allowing the emotions to come up, and exploring them. What is next?
Next might be to really go through every emotion, to um, make time for yourself. And for most people, when we hear make time for yourself, we think about giving yourself a bath and and meditate, but to make time for your needs and your emotions, and that
Mm.
could be go just lie down or take a walk and write about how do I feel, or watching a sad movie because you feel, especially with if your emotions are not really high up in your body and you feel like I need to cry but I can't cry, watch a movie that will make you cry to trigger those emotions. So like really try your best to make your emotions appear. And for some people that will be the really hard part, because you will
Yeah.
see your, what's the English word, like you're standing up against it. You're, if you're crying you are holding back, or you're angry and you have to do something else. But to be angry, and if you have had anger inside of you 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you will be really, really angry when you start taking it out.
Mm.
So for some people, it could look like getting in your car and driving to somewhere where there's no people, put on some music and just scream and
Mm.
get everything out and really work with your emotions and being okay with your emotions that might not be the prettiest emotions,
Mm.
but you like ugly cry and just get everything out.
Mm.
And that will make it more normalized for you. And after a while, it will not appear so dramatic, your emotions, but you will have a more calmer approach to them.
I like that. I definitely like that. I was talking to someone the other day, and he was saying that you know, now that we started talking about emotions and everything, he was just feeling it in his chest, like very heavy feeling, but actually still not knowing what to do with it.
Yeah.
And that was, that feeling was there for a while until he learned to actually, as you say, to find a way, to find a trigger, and to allow the emotions to come out, in opposed to keeping them, bottled up, as maybe was
Yeah.
his way of doing it before.
Yeah, exactly. And for some people to just look at their body or hiding your face, doing some measures that help you feel safe will also make it easier to just get it out, or to shake
Mm.
your body or dance with your body, move your body in some way can also help breaking that barrier.
Yeah, I guess what comes to me is like a little bit getting out of your own head,
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
connecting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
because your body knows what to do, but our head is so strict and learn
Yeah.
how to not behave, so we can't shut it off anymore.
Yeah. And it's incredible when you do cry after you've been bottling things up. The release and the relief is instant. It's like,
Yeah,
and so it is really interesting because, you know, I think as parents, sometimes when we see our kids crying, then we say, "Oh, don't cry, don't cry." And actually, I noticed that with myself the other day when my daughter was crying, and I was going to say something like "Don't cry," and then I was like, "Well, cry if you need to. It's okay, And actually trying to give different way to support, and not just say, "Don't cry," because actually, why not? Just
yeah,
go for it. If you
exactly.
need to cry, just let it out.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly. And I think children are so much more, so much more healthier in that way, and then we as adults are, and we have so much to learn from that child who are just throwing themselves into their emotions. And it's never been a child having huge emotions and never have gotten out of it, which we all as adults are so afraid of. If you're
Mm.
going to drown in your sadness, you will never get out of it. But that's not reality. And just look at the child who are crying, it will always go down again.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of something that I remember about myself some years ago. Mainly, particularly, my older brother passed away 11 years ago, and I couldn't express the way that I was feeling, and I was just carrying it around with me. And then at some point, I had a conversation with someone, and they said something like, just let it out. And I was like, I was worried, I was afraid that if I started crying, that I would never finish. Like
Yeah.
there was so much there,
Mhm.
and it took a long, long time to actually allow myself to really connect with the feelings and the sorrow and the grief, and to walk through them. But I do
Yeah.
definitely recognize that feeling that, yes, if I just it was like a dam. If I opened it, it was like whoosh.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and that's what we learn. And when you have years of that in your body, it will take time also to cry it out. But we also have to do it because it will be too much for us.
Yeah, yeah, I recognize that. And so, do we have another step, or did we cover all of them? I think we have.
Yeah. Well, meeting your childhood trauma, connecting the dots. Like
Mm,
when I feel sad today, what pattern in me is that all about? What happened way back when? Who said what? Um, because our mind needs some evidence that I'm allowed to have this emotion. So by for many people writing down the whole situation, doing an inner child meditation,
mm.
um, can help you to just feel the emotion and how it felt when it happened, and tracing that back to now.
And if I do that, for example, or someone, if we do that, if we recognize that we are feeling an emotion, and we go back there and we say, okay, where did it start? where in my life, as a child, did I meet this emotion before, or that feeling of being unsafe? And once I maybe recognize it and connect with it and cry and do whatever I need to do. So what next? I mean, as we said earlier, it's not a one-off thing, right? We can't just do something and then be fixed. But how when do I know that? When do I recognize that actually I'm now in a good place? What does that feel like?
I think at first we have to be really specific with the situation where you are traveling back to, and to bring all your senses into it. So, how did it smell? What do you hear? Who do you see? Who is in the room, for example? What are they wearing? What are your sensations in that room? And really go through in your mind everything that, from your perspective, being said. And then asking yourself, what should be different? So you can, one way to do it is to visualize yourself as an adult stepping into that situation. What would you say? Who would you throw out of the room, or who would you say something to? And in some situation, it might be nothing you could have done, but you can imagine yourself picking your child's self up from the situation and moving it to here and now where it's safe. And in that way, we are healing those emotions because we are meeting. So, what your parents should have done when it happened, we are now doing. And your emotions or your brain doesn't know if it's now or 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. The emotions are the same. So, by doing that, we can transform the whole energy in the memory and make it feel like more peaceful now. And when we have done that enough times, you will feel that when emotions are coming up, it will not be as much or dramatic. I don't really like the word dramatic, but so
Heavy.
yeah,
I think heavy is
exactly, like tearing you apart. It will be smaller and smaller till it's just a memory, and it doesn't really trigger you anymore. And that's how we heal it. And for most people, we have to do that many times. Some people can do it once and they can feel it, but if you have bringing it with you for such a long time, it usually takes a lot of time to be with that child, to experience the difference.
that feels so empowering to go back there and offer this adult view that you just didn't have when you were a kid,
Yeah,
and now
exactly.
actually, instead of feeling the emotions and the sorrow and the fear because we didn't know better, and now we can just go back and say, yes, it is scary, but actually, and maybe offer some wider view of the situation from the adult point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Like you have some control, where we might feel like we don't have any because it's something that might be happened to you which you couldn't control, but now we can feel some sort of control in the situation, and that feels good.
yeah, and yeah, I can just imagine, because it's also, I guess, for our brain to get some, or to gain some closure now that we look at things
Yeah.
from a different way, then we can let it go. We don't, I mean, we're not changing the event, but we can let the emotion go and not be so um present in our bodies.
Yeah, exactly. And I really think when we understand why something happened, it's so much easier to wrap our head around it, and understanding, and therefore it's not as traumatic. And it's easier to feel into the emotions because we we feel much safer in the event that happened.
Mm. Fascinating.
Yeah, it
Fascinating.
really is.
Really fascinating. Right. Well, thank you so much, Christina, for coming to talk to us and to share and enlighten us with all of this idea of the inner child, and how to approach it. I think for me, I definitely learned some new things, and I'm sure that our viewers will also feel the same. We have one comment. I cannot pronounce the name. I'm sorry, but she said very interesting, and she will listen to the rest of it later. And thank you. Yes, thank you, thank you. That's been really really interesting. So I guess later on you're going to share some links with us to your social media and websites and stuff. And is there any promotion, or I know you have your podcast, maybe more exclusive than because of the English language barrier.
Yeah.
But do you have anything to share with the people listening?
Yes, I have an ebook that I wrote about healing emotions, and I can link the link to that here. And as I said, unfortunately, everything else I do is in Norwegian, so that's kind of limiting there. But that book is in English, so I can share that.
Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to reading it. Thank you so much, Christina, for being here, and thank you anyone and everyone that's been watching and listening. And until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.